Welcome, listeners, to the Bug's Labyrinth, where I will guide you through the maze of secrets that make up our world. I am your host. You can call me the Bug if you must call me anything. A list of all applicable trigger warnings have been provided in the episode notes of every episode. If any topics are of any concern to you, please take care of yourself and skip this episode. We'll be right here for you next time. So, welcome to the Labyrinth. I will be your guide. Killer's Hill. Entity Classification ID TLIL-83. Status of Entity. Identified. Classification of Entity. Location. Location of Entity. Eureka, New Hampshire. First instance of Entity. October 1983. Date of event. September 20th, 2012. Date of report. September 20th, 2022. Name of victim. Sheila Jackson. Assumed awe. The dissolution. People have been talking about Killer's Hill since the town was founded back in 1855. Teenagers talk about it the most. They're the ones who take the road most often. You see, it's a road that dips down at a 45-degree angle, then takes a sharp 90-degree turn to the right once you've hit the bottom, and then goes back up at a less severe angle. Some kids made a game of it. How fast can you make the turn at the bottom of Killer's Hill without spinning out? The issue with it is that the road itself is not just narrow, but it's at its thinnest at that 90-degree turn. Not only that, but the whole thing is in the middle of a weirdly dense pocket of woods despite the rest of the area being developed neighborhoods. So you could never see if there was anyone else trying to make that turn. It was a cheap thrill in an otherwise boring town. It got its name for a reason, of course. Some time ago, maybe in the 80s or 90s, a teenager was driving down that road. The story changes depending on who's telling it. Some people say they were alone. Some say their little siblings were in the car. Others say she wasn't the one driving. What is important, though, is that she was going down Killer's Hill much faster than she should have. And when she hit the bottom, her steering failed. As she tried to make the turn, she slid and wrapped her car around one of the big old oak trees that sat at the corner of the turn, killing her instantly. The tree is still there, so we know at least that someone did die down there. The middle of the tree is bent and warped, and some say you can still find pieces of scrap metal embedded in the bark. Sheila had been living in that town her whole life. She heard the story of Killer's Hill and its ghosts. She didn't believe any of that, though. It was all just nonsense to make people feel better about the afterlife, if there even was one. But if there was one thing Sheila knew, is that she was drawn to Killer's Hill. Despite all the warnings from her parents and concerned teachers, she found herself on that road every day going to and from school. You see, Sheila loved driving. It cleared her mind like nothing else would. The feeling of control at her fingertips was enough to melt away the stress of her life. So she would drive for hours, watching time melt away as the sun set and the people on the roads lessened and lessened. When she was alone on the road at night, she felt like she was truly alone, a ghost in the streets. She relished that feeling, the way stoplights would immediately change as she pulled up. The way the cool night air felt as it flowed through her open windows. For whatever reason, it was driving through Killer's Hill at night that she loved the most. She would take it slow, though. It was a game to her. How slow could you go down Killer's Hill? She would make that turn at barely even a crawl, taking in the trees and sounds of the night. People would talk about seeing a ghost at the bottom of Killer's Hill, a young woman in white standing in front of a tree that took her life all those years ago. Sheila never saw anything, though. Just the occasional deer whose eyes would shine eerily in the light of her headlights. It wasn't until one particularly quiet night. The shape of the world didn't seem quite sharp enough to Sheila, so instead of taking slow turns and quiet roads, she craved something a little more heart-racing. So she decided to race down Killer's Hill. So she drove, finding herself at the peak of the hill right before the road fell into darkness. The decline was so severe that you couldn't see the road or the bottom when you were at the very top, only the lines of houses and lights across the valley. Sheila stopped for a moment at the peak. You could see the entire town from here. The way it sparkled in the night made something in her heart prickle. So she steeled herself and stepped on the gas. At that moment, she understood why everyone did it, why they enjoyed the rush. The thrill made her stomach turn and her heart leap in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. She saw her headlights shudder and shake, causing odd shapes and figures in the tree line. Sheila screamed out in complete and utter glee, but when she reached the right turn, her steering wheel slipped. As panic bubbled in her chest, she looked out the window with wide eyes and saw a young woman on the side of the road, wearing all white. Sheila slammed on her brakes, nearly sending her flying out the windshield, but as she stopped and looked around, trying to find the girl, she was gone. With her heart racing and her body filled with adrenaline, she jumped out of her car and called out to the girl. She looked tired. Oh, so tired. And Sheila felt the inexplicable need to help her, to find her. She didn't that night. But the next night she tried again, driving slowly down the hill, searching the trees for any sign of movement, any spark of white. But she found nothing, only deers and trees. After a few nights of futile and slow searching, she made a decision. Sheila drove to the top of Killer's Hill and pressed her gas pedal to the floor, again feeling the rush of excitement and wind in her hair, seeking the figures in the tree lines, the warping faces that watched her from the dark. When she reached the turn again, she saw the girl, her bright white dress and wide, tired eyes, but instead of stopping, Sheila drove even faster, looping back around to the top and driving down again. There was something intoxicating about seeing the girl, and every time Sheila drove down that hill, going faster and faster than the last, she could have sworn the girl's smile grew wider. Sheila found herself wanting to go out to meet the girl, to know her, to find her, but somehow she knew that it was the speed that granted her this beautiful vision. One last time, Sheila looped around and found herself at the top of Killer's Hill. One last time, she stepped on the gas pedal. One last time, she let go of the steering wheel for just a moment. One last time, she felt the wind in her hair. One last time, she made that 90-degree turn. But that one last time, a truck was coming down the other side. And one last time, Sheila caught a glimpse of the ghost before the driver of the truck laid down on their horn. And of course, it was too late by then. Sheila and the truck crashed in a head-on collision that took Sheila's life on impact. The driver of the truck miraculously survived the crash with minor scratches and bruising. The story of Killer's Hill changed that day. It was no longer about the young girl at the bottom of the hill. People started whispering of a new vision. This time, 2 young women could be seen at the bottom of the hill. One in front of the oak tree and the other in the middle of the road, eyes wide with fear as you drive right through her. Killer's Hill has been a well-documented location of interest for the Institute's research into ghosts and other apparitions. Institute staff have been able to replicate the appearances of the apparitions of the 2 young women who had their lives taken from them, but efforts to add more apparitions to the site have gone unsuccessful at this time. City officials will not allow for the disposal of the site, as it is now a residential area, and the people who own land on the site will not sell despite the large sums offered to them by the Institute. Monitoring will continue. The Bugs Labyrinth is an Amsel TV production. This episode was written, recorded, directed, and edited by Amsel T. Vance. Manuscripts were edited by Avery K. Rayner. Audio consultant, Dani B. Places and names have been changed for the privacy of all involved. Safety is the most important thing to us, and we will never compromise that. Follow us on Twitter @BugsLabyrinth for updates and if you need to contact us. Rate and review us wherever you listen to podcasts. It's the best way to help us out and get our story out there. And support our Patreon to help us keep making cool stuff. Until next time, stay safe, listeners.